Ladies and gentlemen, it is Clock Management. It's Kevin Tompkins here, Optimus Fantasy. We had a week 7. One of the week 7s of all time for sure. Obviously we had that Broncos comeback against the Giants when they put Demaryius Thomas into their Ring of Honor. That was really cool. We had a lot of other stuff in week 7 that was really fun. A certain youthful tight end that plays for the Chargers that went to Syracuse. Won't bury the lead, but he was pretty good too. Probably the biggest waiver wire claim of the week, but we'll certainly talk about that. We talked a lot about him, myself and Nate Polo on the Express last night. If you haven't checked that out after this video, of course. But make sure you like and subscribe. Everything here at Optimus Fantasy. So without further ado, I do want to talk about some tight ends. We talked about running backs. We talked about wide receivers. We gave out some grades for those players and some rest of the season outlooks going forward. We're going to be doing the same thing with tight ends today. We're going to be going into a bunch of them. I know we're going to start with, let me pull it up here because let's start with Trey McBride. Let's just go to the top. And if you have any tight end questions, feel free to toss them into the old chat. I will answer them as I get to them here. Once I get finished with a player, I'll make sure I get to those questions. If there's any tight ends you want to know about as far as like guys I haven't covered, and like some rest of season stuff, feel free to drop them in the chat as well. But let's talk about Trey McBride to start off with, because Trey McBride, do we really have to go into the big thesis with him? Caught 2 touchdowns. He's been awesome with Jacoby Brissett over the last 2 weeks. Obviously, it was the second tight end drafted next to Brock Allen Bowers. But right now, tight end 2 on the season. As far as target earning, he's everything you want. You can't argue with almost 9 targets per game. You can't argue with the production he's put out. Doesn't really have any he is the top target. Going into the season, we wanted to know what Marvin Harrison was going to do in terms of coming up to Trey McBride with the target earning. We know Kyler Murray has consistently led a pretty underachieving offense in Arizona. So the fact that Trey McBride, even with Kyler Murray, and obviously we've had Jacoby Brissett for the last couple of weeks, that has been a very easy thing to parse with Arizona. Trey McBride is the unquestioned top receiver, regardless of position there in Arizona. Has been fantastic. Obviously runs a ton of routes. And then, just some of the efficiency stuff, like 1.57 yards per route runs. It's good. It's good for a tight end. And 23% targets per route run, yards per route run, whatever. He runs a ton of routes. That's typically just the baseline for tight ends because tight ends have been such a, I don't want to say a wasteland, but it's been a very volatile position in terms of getting to the top end of upside. But Trey McBride's been it. He has been hit between him and a couple others that we're going to talk about. Have been the standard bearers at the position. Not many tight ends get the air yards that we get too. So that's really good to see. You typically see your tight ends at 4.5 to 7 in terms of ADOT. And Trey McBride is at the higher end of that scale, certainly on average at 7 on the dot. So it's typically, in the first read stuff is great too, because that when you're drawing up plays, when you're drawing up design of the offense and wanting to funnel that intent somewhere, it's going through Trey McBride. What's this? 5 weeks out of 6. Don't have the first read stuff for week 7 yet, but I would imagine it's also above 30%, or at least close to that. When you have a 12 target game, 10 for 74 and 2 touchdowns, you're typically probably going to be about 40% first read there. So that's also fun to see. Trey McBride's a stud, as advertised. I do think with if you look at like 2026, I don't see right now, unless Brock Bowers absolutely destroys worlds in the second half of the season once he finally gets healthy. I don't see a world where Trey McBride is not the first tight end taken in 2026 drafts. It's probably going to be about the same. So I don't know if people are going to steam him up, because I think people are going to have some sticker shock with a guy like McBride just because he's a tight end. It isn't even really because of McBride. So I wouldn't be shocked if like he got up until like the 2-3 turn next season, but he offers floor, he offers stability. I think what the Cardinals end up doing with the quarterback position is going to be very telling, for his overall upside. But in terms of what we have this year, I mean, obviously he's locked in. I don't think you need me to tell you that. But everything from Trey McBride's been awesome. We'll move on to Kyle Pitts, who, look, we want to talk about being scared off of a player, and I get that 100%, because Kyle Pitts has been pretty much a scary option for the last couple seasons, but he's in the role that we wanted him in for the last couple seasons and haven't been able to get it. Atlanta does run a lot of 12 personnel with Charlie Warner as the blocking tight end. In seasons past, they've run quite a bit of 11 personnel. Last season, with Zach Robinson as offensive coordinator, they ran the most 11 personnel in the league, like 90%. And then that helped get Ray McCloud on the field. Kyle Pitts got on the field, but not as much, where he couldn't be at least the second option, or at least competing with Darnell Mooney, because Kyle Pitts had to come off the field because Charlie Warner ended up being that blocking component, to where the third wide receiver in most situations was going to be Ray McCloud. Now, this season, with them running more 12 personnel with London and now Darnell Mooney, Pitts is able to split out. Pitts is able to move around the formation. Charlie Warner is still able to get on the field. Raymond McCloud has pretty much been vaporized. I believe he was just in healthy scratch. I think they're just going to end up probably cutting him or using him on special teams. That's why you do see Casey Washington, but he is nowhere near a factor that Raymond McCloud even was last year. Like, Raymond McCloud had moments of fantasy viability because he was on the field so much, but also earning some targets, and that was like sporadic. Now you're getting that, plus the upside and athleticism of Pitts in the slot, moving around the formation. That just helps. And having Drake London, who's awesome, also helps, certainly. So, as far as like what Pitts is doing, it's not like super fantasy viable. Like, he's I believe he's tight end like 14, 13 right now. So he's on like that periphery of fantasy viability. But it's a condensed offense in Atlanta. I mean, who is going to get on the field. It's a Zach Robinson thing. It's a Sean McVay thing. Zach Robinson was the passing game coordinator for Sean McVay the last few seasons before going to Atlanta. So he is a disciple. He is on the tree of the Sean McVay coordinators, the Zach Taylors, the Kevin O'Connells, the Liam Cohens, like those guys. So they typically run very condensed offenses in terms of personnel. And then, like, look at the Kyle Pitts' routes: 83, 98, 96, 96, 89, 94, 93. He's getting on the field. That's your first barrier for entry there. You want him to get on the field. Second, is the offense conducive to allowing a tight end to be able to earn targets? That's been somewhat hit or miss. Like, you have a floor with Kyle Pitts, and I think that's something you can't say about a lot of players. But it's closer than where we've been. with Kyle Pitts. Obviously, 1,000-yard rookie season for Kyle Pitts set the bar very high. We had to draft him very high in the following season in 2022. Didn't work out. 23 didn't work out. 24 obviously worked out less too. But I think we're starting to claw our way back. Kyle Pitts does feel like a second contract guy where on the next team he's on, or possibly if he gets re-signed, that's going to help him. But yeah, 1.4 yards per out run. 17% targets per out run. That's about like average for a tight end. It's about like when you're looking for fantasy viability from like tight ends, that's like the borderline of where you want to be. But he has the routes that helps him immensely. So, I mean, Kyle Pitts is fine. Probably more of a C tight end if I had to give him a grade. McBride's an A+, by the way. Let's go over to Baltimore. I know, obviously, they were on bye this past week. And there's going to be questions about Mark Andrews, certainly. Like, it's not a super enthusing profile right now because he is older. And he's really depending on Lamar Jackson being back for his viability. Like, your viability in fantasy is not going to come from Tyler Huntley or Cooper Rush. So, some of the target earning stuff is there. It's just the fact that his routes are kind of subpar, like less than where you want to be. You want to be like your tight ends. I would rather have them in like the 75% range or above. Even like 70%, I guess, is like fine. Because beggars can't be choosers at that point. But the one good thing for like Andrews is that when he is on the field, he is earning targets. 26%, 35%, 21, and 21% targets per out run the last 4 weeks before the bye. And I know some of them were with backup quarterbacks. But then you're going to get an efficiency spike with Lamar Jackson. Now, Andrews hasn't been like very viable because it's been Zay Flowers and it's been a lot of like guys where he's like Rashad Bateman and DeAndre Hopkins and guys like that he kind of mixes in with versus stands out above them. And then the Isaiah Likely stuff, him getting on the field, and I know they run 12 personnel as well. That doesn't exactly help. That just adds another mouth to feed in the offense. And look, ran 85% of routes. Likely did. Like, that's not good for the Andrew thesis right now. So I'm probably Andrews is a streamer right now as far as streaming tight ends. Lamar Jackson's obviously going to help him have some like streaming viability. But if he's like your only tight end in managed leagues, I can't say that I feel super good about that. 1.3 yards per out run, 20%. Like I said, the inflated targets per route run because he runs a little bit less volume of routes, but is targeted when he is on the field. So, like that's fine for a streamer. As a guy that you're not going to be having him and starting him every week. Like that's not who Andrews is anymore, and that's fine. We just have to like look up because Mark Andrews has been so good for so long. He's a name brand, like a lot because he's had such longevity in fantasy circles. He's kind of like that. Oh well, I know who he is. I'm gonna pick him up. But at some point, you got to separate from that. Let's go over to Buffalo. And I know I've like kind of lambasted Dalton Kincaid through much of his career. I've never really been a Dalton Kincaid guy. Yeah, Lou, you're exactly right. He's not the main cog of the offense anymore, and that's okay. It's okay. It's a new world for us. I fully agree. Just don't judge me for the things I'm going to say about Dalton Kincaid and your Bills, please. Yeah, Dalton Kincaid missed week 6, bye week 7. Outside of that, the one thing that sticks out for me is the routes. 60%, 59%, 63%, 57, 60. This is his 5 games this season. 3 touchdowns, has a 100-yard game in week 5. I would say it's a bit of a lesser of a profile than like the Mark Andrews. And I know, look, he's gotten deep in the last, few weeks. His ADOT's actually pretty impressive for a tight end. As like in that role. 32%, 30%, 25% targets per outrun. Like that's pretty decent for like the week to week, like the spike week viability. He's been very efficient. 2.59 yards per outrun. I just want to see him get more routes. And he gets kind of sucked into that Buffalo vortex of we need to get guys between 60 and 70% routes, like everybody on the field. Whether it's Shakir, Keon Coleman, getting Curtis Samuel on the field, Elijah Moore. Like at some point, it comes down to coaching and it comes down to that's your deficiency where you need to get guys that are efficient. You need to get guys that are producing on the field. And yeah, criminal lack of usage of Kincaid. Yeah, you draft, and he was what, a 2nd round pick? Like, what are we doing? You need to get your guys that are going to produce on the field. Dalton Kincaid, for all the things I've said about him over the years, the proof is here. Like, he is produced, he's efficient, he earns targets. He just needs more. Like, if Dalton Kincaid were a 75 to 80%, that's right, 1st round, yeah. If he were a 75 to 80% routes player, he'd be as locked in of a starter as he'd be up there with the Jake Fergusons. He'd be up there with the, I don't know about the McBrides, but he's probably in a 2nd tier tight ends for sure. And he might be there now, just based on production. But it's the routes that holds him back. Like, many are saying you need to be on the field to earn targets. That is the number one thing you need to do to earn a target. You need to be on the field to do it. It's as easy a thing as you'll hear. You need to be on the field to earn a target. Then you need to separate. You need to run your route. Then the quarterback needs to get you the ball. Quarterback's getting on the ball when he is on the field. He just needs to get on the field. And then they also, it's not even just Kincaid. They play Dawson Knox quite a bit. They play Jackson Hawes, not Spencer Hawes, not NBA center Spencer Hawes, Jackson Hawes. No relation, by the way. I actually did look that up. But I know they get Jackson Hawes out there as like a blocking guy, and I know Dawson Knox is a combo guy. But they get those tight ends they have decent tight ends, like good NFL tight ends. But for like what we want in fantasy, our funny little game that we play within a game, we need Dalton Kincaid to get on the field more. Simple as that. Like for what Kincaid has done, like I'm just hoping upon hope that Buffalo understands we need to get this guy in the field post-bye. Because that's going to be a guy that's going to win leagues. Dalton Kincaid is going to be a league-winning guy if he can get on the field. If Sean McDermott, if Joe Brady can get him on the field, and I'm talking about consistently, over the glut of Khalil Shakir's, Josh Palmer's, and all these guys that run 60 to 65% of routes. Get him over that. Get him consistently on the field. Let him make plays for you. Let him be a downfield guy. He's a league winner in fantasy. You get him that, he's a league winner, 100%. Let's go to Carolina, where we're getting some breaking news about Bryce Young and his injury status. Luckily, or not luckily, but we're going to be getting the red rifle out there, Andy Dalton. The highest of ankle sprains for Mr. Bryce Young. So that certainly does not help matters. But what we do like, well, I don't know if we really like it. But Jatavius Sanders is probably, he came back after 3 weeks, missing 3 weeks, 39% of routes. At this point, it's a guy that you could just cut. Tight ends really don't matter in Carolina. We can move on. Like, he's a guy you can cut. He'll probably ramp up. It's a guy that we had hope on. We had hope that he could be a thing in this offense. That's really the only reason why I wanted to talk about him, because we had hope at one point. Then he landed on his head. Moving over to Chicago, where Cole Kmet did end up getting hurt, but also accelerated a bit of the process here for Colston Loveland to maybe get some more run in this offense. But we just want to see him get on the field more. Season high routes, season high snaps last week, or yesterday, I should say, against New Orleans. Season high 4 targets, 3 catches, 24. Like, we're really scratching the bottom of the barrel here. But this is a guy that was drafted in like the 10th round or 11th round in fantasy. Obviously, a real life top 10 pick in the draft. So yeah, like Colston Loveland is a guy, like a watch guy right now. Cole Kmet, not quite to 0, but like he's at like 0.1. Yeah, he's definitely a guy to watch. Cincinnati, there's nobody to talk about. Gesicki's hurt. No fan. They play so many tight ends. They play typically 4 tight ends almost every week. You can't do it for fantasy. Over to the Cleveland football Browns, David Njoku did get hurt. So that opened the door for our duck-footed king, Mr. Harold Fannin. That opened the door. Yesterday was not the best environment for Harold Fannin. Dylan Gabriel threw the ball 18 times. But Fannin led the team in targets, 5 targets, 4 for 36. Directionally accurate play, because Harold Fannin did jump up big time in routes, 91%. Did jump up in snaps, 83%. I believe they had just Blake Whiteheart active as a blocker, and I think they ended up using I think they used a backup offensive lineman as the 3rd tight end. He didn't run a route, but they didn't elevate. I believe they had Sal Cannella on the practice squad as well. So they didn't activate him. They just used the 3rd offensive lineman. They probably figured this was a game where they didn't need a 3rd tight end. And sometimes that happens. Like your stylistic, whatever Kevin Stefanski wants to do. But we love Harold Fannin. 20, look at his targets per route run. 29, 21, 22, 22, 22, 24%. Consistently earns targets, is consistently efficient, 1.5 yards per out run for Harold Fannin. Consistently in the slot. He is going to be a matchup nightmare for opposing defense. This has been all season. What we're looking for is like that full runway with Harold Fannin. We're looking for possibly a trade of David Njoku on the last year of his deal. He's a veteran. We know that the Browns are wanting to get more youth involved. They obviously traded Joe Flacco, elevated Dylan Gabriel to starting quarterback. They've given a lot of routes to Isaiah Bond with Cedric Tillman's injury. Obviously, in the run game, they've had Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson taking a lot of the real estate there. So this is a team, and then on defense, they've had some of their rookies as well. It's a team that they're trying to find players for the future. And Harold Fannin is exactly that. He might be their best pass catcher. He might be their best target earner right now, and that includes Jerry Jeudy. So the fact that Harold Fannin plays the tight end position is arguably their top target right now. That's what you want. That's the profile you want for a league-winning fantasy tight end. That's what you want. You want a guy that earns targets and can get on the field. And we're hoping that the Njoku stuff kind of works itself out. I think he could still be that with Njoku. I just think you have to thread a very, very thin needle for it. You have to hit so hard on efficiency with Fannin, with Njoku there, that it's not an impossible bet to make, but you have to thread a very specific needle for that, for Fannin. Yeah, as odd as it sounds, having Fannin and Judkins on the same team insulates your team on game script. And that's not something I thought I'd say about any Browns this year. Yeah, like Quinshon Judkins. I mean, Quinshon Judkins is basically Nick Chubb reincarnated. So, yeah, he's awesome. Fannin's awesome. Fannin brings the efficiency you want and the target earning. You just got to get him some more routes. Hopefully that works itself out. But like, he's bad from where you had to draft him, which was at the end of drafts and like redraft, or you picked him up after week 1 where he had 9 targets, 7 for 63. He's an A- right now. We just got to get him over that hump. Dallas, Jake Ferguson's been a rock star. And really, the Dallas Cowboys offense has been a rock star. It's just Ferguson has been the volume earning component of that. And the fact that he's scored 6 touchdowns this year, that probably helps things too. But yeah, look, 9, 13, 7, 7, 3, 7. Like, you'll take that at tight end. You'll take, obviously, just based on catches alone, we're talking what? 16, 21, 11, 11.9, 6.3, 9.9. That's just in receptions and yards. Add your touchdowns to that. You're cooking. You're cooking with gas. He's getting on the field where we want him to. He's about like the average. He's not a high ADOT guy. Never really has been. But in this Cowboys offense, that's, you know, the ball's getting to Lamb. You know the ball's getting to Pickens. And Ferguson is like a big part of that. My thesis with the Cowboys heading into the season was you have the Philadelphia Eagles that are very condensed to their top 3 pass catchers with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert. The Cowboys can be a version of that, but with pass volume. And Dak Prescott's been awesome this year. So he is helping build up that ecosystem. And this is probably the most outside of the Chargers, might be the most fantasy friendly offense in football. You're getting your top 2 pass catchers. You're getting your tight end. You're getting your running back. Dak Prescott's tying it all together. Everything we want. Targets per out run, almost 28%. 1.59 yards per out run. Like, totally fine. Solid efficiency. No complaints. No complaints whatever about our fantasy tight end one right now. Jake Ferguson. 17 points per game thus far. No complaints. A+. Especially because you had to draft Jake Ferguson. What was he, like tight end 8 or 9? And you're getting... And the reason why he's tight end 1, I mean, you've had Brock Bowers getting hurt. Does not help matters. But you've had a lot of changeover at the position. You've had some of the older guys kind of aging out a little bit. The Mark Andrews and the Travis Kelce's. You've had some injuries. You've had, Evan Engram is obviously with Denver, and we'll talk about him right now after this. But he's always been like a target earning option. Obviously, Njoku splitting time with Fannin and then getting hurt. So we're getting some changeover at the position. But yeah, that's certainly helped Jake Ferguson get where he's at now. So tight end 1, gotta love it. Over to the Broncos. Evan Engram. I mean, the thesis was everybody wanted to talk about him as the Joker. The Joker. What Sean Payton did 19 years ago, 17 years ago with tight ends. We're hoping that would be the thesis in 2025. I don't get it. Anybody who's watched Evan Engram, I think, got fixated on that to where that's just not who Evan Engram is right now. And it's not who Evan Engram has been the last couple seasons with Jacksonville. Like when he was with the Giants, he had that awesome rookie season. That rookie season was because everybody got hurt. Brandon Marshall got hurt. Odell Beckham got hurt. Everybody got hurt around him, and that got Evan Engram to earn 100 targets. We haven't seen Engram earn 100 targets on straight talent. It's been just pure volume. He's been slightly more athletic Jake Ferguson. There's nothing wrong with that. It's been good for fantasy, but there's a difference in how you earn your targets, whether it's, a guy like Bowers, who is a yak monster and is but just the best player on the field in most instances, versus Evan Engram being able to take what kind of defenses give him, sitting down in his zone or just out-muscling a guy. But at least in this Denver Broncos offense that we've seen this season, he has been a guy that's rotated with the Adam Troutmans and the Nate Adkins. The hope was that Courtland Sutton runs a lot of routes, but Evan Engram could be that, but at tight end. And 30-year-old Evan Engram is not that. It's not what he is. All the top 25 tight ends, every single one of them, has run at least 60% of routes this season. But Evan Engram. He's been, targets per route run is good. And that's because he's still earned targets on limited routes. That targets per route run gets very much inflated because of that. It's all within context. There's a reason why these numbers are inflated. He's still earning targets, but when you're running 55% of routes, that gets inflated. And 1.28 is meh level of yards per out run for a tight end. It's just It's not fine. It's just it's painfully it's below average. So I'm not a big fan of Evan Engram. I can't see him gaining routes as the season goes on unless they just have an entire swath of injuries at the position. So moving to Detroit, Sam Laporta. It's easy to kind of get lost in the weeds in this offense a little bit. We've seen that with Jameson Williams. But Amon-Ra St. Brown earns his. The guys that earn theirs in this offense, they're consistently fed. And I know Sam Laporta hasn't had like the greatest like first 4 weeks of the season, but at least the last 2 weeks, 5 for 92 and a touchdown, 5 for 55 and a touchdown. I think he's starting to get back into because the beginning of the season last season was pretty much a sophomore slump, and then came back in the last like 6-7 weeks and turned it way on, turned the oven up, and totally fine. Like Laporta runs a ton of routes, earns a ton of snaps, 90% snaps on the season, 81% routes, almost a 20% targets per out run. Good, very good. 2.12 yards per out run. It's just he gets lost in the offense sometimes, and that's with a good offense like this that is so amazingly productive. It's almost like the San Francisco 49ers of a couple years ago when you had the Brandon Ayuk and you had Debo and you have Kittle and you have CMC. There's only one football to go around for these guys. And not everybody can get it every week. But we'll see tonight. We're through 6 games. Tampa and Detroit have to play tonight. But I do like Sam Laporta as just like a solid locked in tight end 1. He's tight end 9 right now. Obviously has room to maneuver. A nice solid game at his average gets him up to like a top 5 tight end this week. Over to Green Bay. And I've said my slander on Tucker Kraft as well. But 4 touchdowns. He earned the most volume he's earned all season. 5 for 58. He's been very touchdown dependent. And then he gets lost in the weeds too because Green Bay is so uncondensed. You're looking at your Matthew Goldens, your Romeo Dobbs and Wicks and having to get Jacobs involved. Like Kraft gets stuck in the weeds too. And that's a guy which, he runs routes. He's always on the field. But he kind of gets lost. He doesn't just get lost like with other players. He gets lost in the game plan because game plans tend to specifically target 1 or 2 guys. We saw it with like Jayden Reed last year, where Jayden Reed would have like that blow up game, and that game he had against the Rams where he was like 3 for 124 or something like that. But then he like disappears when the Packers get super run heavy. That just thins out every single bet in the offense. And Kraft is really good. That's the thing, is that Tucker Kraft as like a real life tight end is probably like he's taking the baton from George Kittle. So I do love Tucker Kraft. I want to see him be more viable in fantasy. He does feel like a risky start in some weeks. So I'm a fan. I just want to see him be more part of the game plan. 2 yards per out run, awesome. 18% targets per out run. Let's go over to Houston. Dalton Schultz runs routes. That's basically what he is. He's okay. Like, Kraft has Gronk to his game. I think it's more Kittle to his game, honestly. I think he's a good two-way tight end. I don't know if I see Gronk in terms of like the touchdown stuff, like he's a red zone monster. I don't know if I see that. But I do see Kittle in terms of like some yak ability, getting into the seam, getting downfield. But Kraft is awesome. Kraft is a really good tight end. Dalton Schultz is like fine for what he is. He's like okay. He's consistent. He's on the field. But he's not a guy you need to go out and target. He's been like 20% targets per out run. In this offense that is basically in the passing game is Nico Collins and the rest. That's not nothing. I'm actually somewhat surprised by this because I haven't like really looked too deep into the Dalton Schultz thing. And I know the second I say something, he's going to just go 1 for 21 tonight. Like, I know I just totally jinxed it. But like the profile's not bad. He's Jake Ferguson. We have Jake Ferguson at home. The really, really awful version of Jake Ferguson, at least this season. But he's fine. And so there's something too fine as far as like a streaming tight end. So the profile jumps out a little more than I had actually anticipated for Dalton Schultz. Let's go over to Indianapolis. Tyler Warren's awesome. Touchdowns in the last 3 games. He's consistently involved in the offense, runs a ton of routes, 84% of routes, 2.23 yards per route run. Do we have our efficiency king for the future? 23% targets per route run. This was like my big miss in fantasy this season. This is Tyler Warren. And it's probably because I was so hyper fixated on how the Colts have used tight ends in the past that it was very hard to kind of see the forest through the trees and see that they drafted Warren for a specific reason to get out of having to do that. Because they've used Mo Alley Cox, they've used Ogletree, they've used Will Mallory, they've used Kylan Granson. Just going back to like Jack Doyle, they haven't really had a tight end they've featured prominently in like a fantasy way. But Warren's it. He might be the 2026 draft is going to be interesting because I do think it's still McBride at the top, but you can make a case for doing Tyler Warren as tight end 2 with Brock Bowers, depending on his injury stuff. We might get a little bit of an injury discount on Bowers, even just talking about drafts next season. But Warren could be the tight end 2 next season that we're probably drafting at the end of the 3rd round. I think a lot of that depends on the quarterback, whether they re-sign Daniel Jones long-term or they get a quarterback somehow. But you have to like everything you've seen out of Tyler Warren. A+. 100%. Jacksonville, tough stuff with a guy like Brenton Strange, who that's a profile we liked Brenton Strange a lot. Was really starting to come on, and then he got hurt. 23% targets per out run, 27% targets per out run, showing solid efficiency, and then he got hurt. And you can't really bank on any other options. Johnny Munt, you can't bank on. Hunter Long has been the guy that's run routes, but you can't bank on that. You can't add him for fantasy. Travis Kelce, the famed podcaster, Travis Kelce. I don't know if you've heard of him. He is in his late stage Tony Gonzalez era. Maybe more Jason Witten, honestly. Some of the stuff that he used to do is still kind of evident. He's still earning targets at a pretty decent clip. He's still getting his ass downfield a little bit. He's just he's a compiler right now. And at tight end, you can't. That's not a bad thing. But even in this Chiefs offense, that now they have Rashee Rice, Worthy, Patrick Mahomes is looking like the MVP right now. Kelce could get lost in the shuffle very easily now with Rashee Rice back and Worthy, and then some of the ancillary guys like Marquise Brown and Pacheco getting a lot more run now. 17% targets per out run, 1.67 yards per out run. Totally fine. He's not really hurting people. He's tight end 5 on the season. Like he's averaging 11.5 fantasy points per game. Like you'll take that. It's not great. Morning, Joe. Thanks for stopping in. So yeah, like Kelce just kind of is what he is right now as a compiler in this offense, where he could get kind of lost in the offense as well. But he's going to have like like a random 8 for 90 game in the next couple weeks. He still has that capability. He's still almost 22% for his free target rate. Totally fine. Vegas. And look, this hurts me because it's Bowers. That's my dude. Even when getting hurt, he was still at like 22% targets per route run. He was still at almost 2 yards per route run. He was still getting, first read targets, probably 26%. He was doing everything we wanted. And then he got hurt, and then he took the offense with him. He took his ball and went home. And it's just this offense is so putrid right now because they don't have Jacoby Myers. Geno Smith has been not good. That it's, obviously Michael Mayer. You can't really trust him either. He had a good week against Tennessee. Tennessee might be the only offense that rivals the Raiders in terms of like just being completely awful. But the Raiders are on a bye. Obviously, you're not starting any of those guys. You're probably not starting any of those guys against Jacksonville either. You're hoping upon hope that Brock Bowers comes back. If he's healthy, he's being started no matter what, no matter who the quarterback is or what the state of this offense is. But it's clearly not what we expected it to be this season. So, I think it's time to talk about Oronde Gadsden a little bit. I think it's time. I've waited 49 minutes to do it. Routes starting in week 3, 28%, 50, 61, 77, 77. Earned targets immediately in week 3 in his first game, 5 for 46 against Denver. 40% targets per route run. He only ran 28% of routes. 6 targets on 28% of routes is a lot. That is clear intent from the offense and from the quarterback to get that guy the ball. They had stuff worked out in the game plan for Oronde Gadsden. And then kind of lied in the weeds a little bit. He was still kind of splitting with Will Dissly and Tyler Conklin. And then week 6 is really where we started to see Tyler Conklin got sent to 0. Literally 0. Didn't run a route week 6. Didn't play week 7. Yeah. We are at a good spot with Rondé Gadsden right now. And the question, I talked about this with Nate on the Express last night, is that Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Keenan Allen, I get the competition there, where it's going to make even the highest pass rate over expected teams and the highest Justin Herbert threw the ball 55 times yesterday. So that makes it difficult for a guy like a Rondé Gadsden to be like as consistent a fantasy option. But you also have to take into account if Gadsden were in a normal offense, like a league average pass rate, we'd be talking about him as a streamer and maybe overrating him a little bit. This would be like a blow up kind of performance. But the fact that not only does he have the backing of Justin Herbert's passing, just the pass rate in general, you have an offense that clearly can support multiple pass catchers, not just with raw passing, but with pass rate over expected in terms of passing in specific situations more than other teams. The fact that he sent every other guy, including Will Dissly, he basically sent him to 0 too. Tucker Fisk was the only other tight end that was out there more than 6% of routes outside of Gadsden. That's because Tucker Fisk is typically your blocking tight end. Sent Conklin to 0. Sent Dissly to basically 0. He's a wide receiver. Played wide receiver at Syracuse. Had Grant Believes a sophomore year. Got banged up. I think the reason that he was so underrated was because he played at Syracuse. It's not exactly like the biggest hotbed for college talent. Yeah, agreed, 100%. I didn't know bees had knees, but if they do, he's But yeah, Gadsden sent the guys around him to 0. 8 targets, 9 targets, 14 catches for 233 yards and a touchdown the past 2 weeks. 103 air yards, by the way, for a tight end. Like, he's not your typical. He's like Juwan Johnson with better ball skills. That's who Gadsden is. And the fact that Jim Harbaugh has talked him up as being a willing blocker as a wide receiver turned tight end only helps. So you're sending Gadsden to the moon right now. If you're trying to figure out how much fab to use on him, Gadsden might be one of the few players left that's like an empty the clip player, where say you're trotting out, you're streaming tight end and you have, Theo Johnson, or you're streaming one of the, or you lost Waller because Waller got hurt. Or you have Njoku and you don't care for that, or you didn't like Dallas Goedert getting only 4 fantasy points yesterday. I mean, look, Gadsden is it. Gadsden is your best shot, I think, that you're going to have all season of capturing league-winning upside at tight end. Full stop. Earns targets, has been getting on the field exponentially more. Efficient, 2.2 yards per outrun. And I know that's a lot of that's inflated because of the early stuff. But just the fact that he's doing that week 6, week 7 on 77% of routes. To the moon. For Rondé Gadsden. The Rams. Tyler Higbee hasn't been super. relevant. All these guys, especially Puka Nakua out, they all run about 34 to 39% of routes. So you can't start any of these guys. Miami, with Darren Waller having a pectoral injury. I mean, he was where you wanted him. He was on that same kind of trajectory as terms of 36% of routes, 68% of routes, 78. All while scoring touchdowns. All while being part of this condensed offense in Miami. Like the pectoral muscle, pectoral injury definitely hampered things to where now that sends back out Julian Hill and Tanner Connor. You can't start either of those guys. There's not enough targets to go to these guys. TJ Hawkinson, let's talk about real quick. Fate Rewind, I will get to your question here in a second. Like he's been okay. He runs a ton of routes. Obviously, we drafted him pretty highly in fantasy. Tight end 6, tight end 7-ish. Just hasn't been very efficient. 1.05 yards per route run, just a 17% or 18% targets per route run. Like that's fine for tight ends in terms of earning targets. He just hasn't been very efficient with the targets he's earned. And it's a condensed offense in Minnesota as well. You got Jefferson, you've got Addison, you've got Hawkinson. That's like your big three. Carson Wentz is doing enough in this offense where he's not completely blowing games, but he has the eye to the wide receivers more than the tight end. So that doesn't like super help. He's been a tougher start. You probably have to hold on to him knowing what he can do. But it's not like the best spot right now for Hawkinson. That would be a guy where I would love to pair him with a guy like Gadsden, where like Hawkinson is like a safe, he's going to get on the field option. Not that Gadsden isn't, but you can kind of play yin yang that way too. The Andrew Cooper method of tight ends. Would I trade Devonta Smith for Travis Etienne? Depends on if you need the running back and you have wide receiver cover outside of Smith. I don't hate it. I don't see. I think the Bashal Tootin. I don't want to say that ship has sailed with Bashal Tootin, but it's very clear that it's not going to be via Bashal Tootin overtaking Etienne without an injury. It's going to take an injury for Tootin to overlap Etienne. So I think that kind of secures Etienne in terms of like that role in Jacksonville, to where I feel better about him now. But some of the efficiency stuff, obviously, the Jacksonville offense has their own set of issues. I mean, I'd certainly entertain that. If you had the wide receiver cover, you need the running back. If it's a need, I'd do it. Let's go over to New England, where look, Drake May's awesome, but is he awesome for Hunter Henry? Yeah, you too. Thank you for asking. Is he awesome for Hunter Henry? I mean, he's certainly taken a back seat to Stephon Diggs and even Kayshon Boutte. Look, Hunter Henry's 30 years old. Like, he's not what he once. Well, he's not what he was even in the first couple years in New England or even with the Chargers. 6, what's that? 7. I mean, a little over 3 targets per game the last 4 weeks. Like, he's hard to start. You can't start him right now. 17.3 targets per outrun, 1.62 yards per outrun. Like, A lot of his stuff was like weighted toward the very beginning of the season. Obviously, those couple games that he had 4 for 66, 8 for 90. And yeah, make sure you like this video and subscribe to Optimus Fantasy while you are here for sure. Yeah, Hunter Henry's a very, very tough start right now. Does not feel good. That's a spot where if you're starting Hunter Henry and you need some firepower at tight end, that would be a spot to pick up Gadsden for sure. Let's talk about New Orleans, because New Orleans is interesting now. I know Spencer Rattler had like we were waiting for the other shoe to drop game for him. And I know Juwan Johnson has been hurt the last few weeks. He had that awesome start to the season and kind of fell off a bit. 7 catches combined for 60 yards. Weeks 4 through 6. 5 for 79 yesterday against Chicago. Solid. They need that tight end option. He runs a ton of routes. And that was also interesting to see that New Orleans had their full complement of tight ends. They had Foster Moreau. They had Taysom Hill. Jack Stoll is a blocking tight end that's regularly out there. But the fact that Juwan Johnson still, with all those guys, is running 80% of routes, I think that's really good and bullish for him. And then seems to be healthier than he has been in the last 2 weeks. So, solidly efficient. Earns targets, 20% targets per outrun, basically. 1.4 yards per outrun, a little under what we want, but I think those few weeks bogged him down that he was hurt. So I think he's a sneaky starter going forward. I think he's at the bottom of like the tight end one stuff, but probably a guy with like the route space upside, because there's clear upside, not just with guys that are efficient at tight end. We have to lower the bar a little bit. But there is upside in like routes-based upside too, with guys we know are going to be on the field. Guys like Juwan Johnson, guys like Cade Otton, that are just like Dalton Schultz, guys that we know are going to be out there that don't have a lot of competition behind him, that are locked into what they are. And that helps with streaming really more than anything. But Juwan Johnson, obviously, is a former wide receiver, has been a converted to tight end. Like, that's the profile we want. So, definitely a big fan of Juwan Johnson moving forward. I think he's going to have, build off of this 5 for 79 game going forward. The Giants with Theo Johnson. I've never really been a big fan of Theo Johnson. I just think he's like okay. 4 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. We're almost at 6 targets per game in the last 4 games as well. Under a yard per outrun, doesn't earn targets, 15.3% targets per outrun. Like, it's not a great profile. And I know the Giants need pass catchers right now. They're still rocking the, obviously Malik Neighbors isn't there. So they're rolling with Wandale and trying to figure out with Little Jordan Humphrey, while Darius Slayton is injured as well, what they want to do with their pass catchers. I just don't know if Theo Johnson's like the answer. I just think he's like a good option for them in real life versus a fantasy option. We saw Daniel Bellinger get involved too. Had a 44-yard touchdown at the beginning of the game against the Broncos. So, like, I think he's fine. Theo Johnson is. But he's a low-end streamer for me just because he hasn't really earned targets consistently. He is like routes-based upside, but like at the very bottom of that totem pole. Going over the Jets. The Jets are tough because the Jets are such a dumpster fire in terms of what they do. I think we all got enamored with like this couple game stretch here, 17 targets in 2 games for Mason Taylor, where we were hoping, all right, he's probably the second wide receiver. Then Garrett Wilson got hurt. Josh Reynolds has been running a ton of routes. But this offense is so bad right now. They had to go to Tyrod Taylor yesterday. It's just very hard to look at Mason Taylor and feel comfortable starting him every week. Sub 1 yards per out run, 14% targets per out run. I get a lot of that is because of the one reception games, but he's been on the field a ton, almost 79% of routes. So I don't know if we can make that excuse. I think he's in the Theo Johnson tier of tight end, of circumstantial guys that run a ton of routes but just do not earn targets, and certainly not enough targets consistently to be able to be fantasy relevant in most weeks. Philly, Dallas Goedert. He's been a very situational guy in terms of he's got 5 touchdowns on the season. That's a lot of that's been like the near the end zone stuff, the pop passes and all that. So that's kind of boosted him up. He had an awesome target earning game in week 6 against the Giants. 9 for 110, a touchdown. Came kind of back down to earth with all the wide receiver stuff for the Eagles last week, lost in the shuffle. I still think the Eagles are a good offense. I just don't they don't have like the week to week consistency with it. There's going to be peaks and valleys there with Goddard. But yeah, like it doesn't feel super great to start him, even though you're getting obviously you're getting touchdown volume, you're getting touchdown equity, which is been a big sticking point for him. And health overall. He's been healthy outside of he missed obviously the game against Kansas City. But solidly efficient, 1.5 yards per out run. 20% first read stuff. 20% targets per out run. Yeah. Totally fine. In this offense, it's so condensed. It's Brown, Smith, and Goddard. It's a lesser version of like the Cowboys stuff where it's funny because we compared the Cowboys to the Eagles, but the Cowboys should probably be the thing you compare to. Even though the Eagles did it first. No team passes to their tight ends more than the Pittsburgh Steelers. However, you can't start any of them because they all take one role. The fact that they trot out Darnell Washington so much. I mean, Jonnu Smith had 80% of routes. Like, that's fine. But this offense is so spread out after DK Metcalf that you can't trust anybody. Even Freiermuth, the blow-up game he had. That was his first game above 61% routes all season. Just can't do it. San Francisco, obviously Jake Tongas was a thing. While Kittle was hurt, came back last night, 2 targets, no catches, but back to 86% of routes. You'll love to see it. Better days are ahead. I think Kittle is still a perfectly fine elite option at tight end. So if you've got him, this is the lowest it's going to get for him. You can even buy low on him too. If for some reason somebody's scared off, because there's always a couple people out there. Like, buy low. Why not? Going over to Seattle, they obviously play tonight. But AJ Barner's been actually pretty productive. 4 touchdowns this season. The target earning stuff has not been there outside of like the one game in week 5 against Tampa. 7 for 53 and 2 touchdowns. He's been decently efficient, 1.8 yards per route run. He just hasn't earned targets. And is not getting on the field to like right where we want him to. Yeah, you can't get lower than George Kittle. It's only up from here. The elevator can only go up. But yeah, Barner's not where we want him to be in terms of like target earning. And then the fact that he kind of splits that role with Elijah Arroyo as it is, and Arroyo has been super productive, so it hasn't like really necessitated Sam Darnold to target anything else more than JSN or Cooper Kupp. So it could be with an injury, it could be something we may pay attention to, whether if it's Barner or Arroyo. But other than that, I think it's probably a very forgettable tight end room. Tampa, Cade Otton, minus all of, the injuries, whenever all those guys were healthy, Cade Otton was not great. Couldn't earn targets, on the field a ton, very bad yards per out run. Everybody gets hurt, all of a sudden, 9 targets, 132 yards combined last 2 weeks. They obviously played tonight against Detroit. Still, everybody, a lot of people are hurt. Could get Mike Evans back. Could get Emeka Buka back. I know Cade Otton's was like a consensus top 8 tight end this week in terms of like rankings. But I think he's a very high variance player. He could either earn 0. He has like his floor is shockingly low. It's literally 0. But I think it's with some of the volume available. I think he's like a fine streamer right now. When those guys get healthy, I think Cade Otton just kind of gets stashed away in mothballs. Tennessee, nothing really relevant here. Like Chigakonko, we were hoping could be a thing, but this offense with now the interim head coach Mike McCoy, with Cam Ward looking at more and more like Josh Rosen every day. Not super great. Not super great. And then you got Gunnar Helm encroaching a little bit every week. Not great. Can't start either of those guys. And then over the last guy, the almost 35-year-old Zach Ertz. He's totally fine for what he is. He catches touchdowns. He's in the offensive game plan. Like the target earning is not where you want it, because Washington's one of those offenses that sneaks up on you in terms of like when Jane Daniels is on, they look really good. They're completely made by their quarterback. Outside of like, it's because Terry McLaurin's been hurt, Debo's been hurt. The mask is off with like this offense, where it is really old. The fact that Chris Moore is out there running routes at 80%. Zach Ertz is out there running 80% of routes at 34 years old. 3 for 37 and a touchdown against Dallas yesterday. Like, okay. He doesn't feel great either, but he is a brand name. Zach Ertz is very much a brand name. 1.16 yards per out run, 17% targets per out run. Like, he should be a streamer, but because he has that name value, he's probably a low end tight end 1. But you can't get me to play him next week at Kansas City. You can't get Seattle, Detroit, maybe that Miami matchup. But I'm not playing Zach Ertz at Kansas City. I'm sorry, I can't do it. You can't make me. But while they have all these injuries, like, he feels fine to use. You just have to like temper your expectations. knowing that you're probably not getting a ceiling game out of him. Now, I mean, I don't even know if a ceiling game is in the cards for Ertz, but he's fine. Totally fine. Yeah, so we went through all the tight ends here. At least a lot of the relevant ones. Let's go back. Yeah, so went through most of the tight ends here. Trey McBride's awesome. Aronde Gadsden is the top waiver wire claim of the week, regardless of position. Jake Ferguson is still really good. Travis Kelce's old. So is Zach Ertz. Evan Engram doesn't run enough routes. Dalton Kincaid should, but doesn't. Harold Fannin needs an Njoku trade to truly take over. We need our King Brock Bowers to get healthy. As the kids say, bless up, King. Better days are ahead for George Kittle. That is the state of your tight end position. Make sure you like and subscribe here at Optimus Fantasy. We got a lot going on almost every day. We got shows. I mean, hey, look, when you're old, you're old. You're former podcaster, not current podcaster, I should say. Look, he's going to be former NFL player, full-time podcaster pretty soon. Those days are rapidly approaching for old Travis Kelce. But make sure you like and subscribe everything we're doing at Optimus Fantasy here. Check out our website as well. Check out our tools. Next week, we'll have a guest. I don't know who it's going to be yet, but we're going to talk about some Week 8 stuff. Obviously, Buy-Mageddon is here with 6 teams on bye in Week 8. So it's going to make it a little more difficult to set your lineups. We're going to help you parse through a lot of that with an unnamed guest. Going to get on the horn, get somebody awesome in here to talk some ball. But I'm Kevin Tompkins. This has been Clock Management. We will see you same time next week. Toodles.
Thank you.